Dr. Val, we are really excited to have you on the Lead Your Life series. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Krista and Alex. Very happy to be here.
Well, and as we talk about leading our lives, a huge factor in that is rest. And sleep is a huge part of rest. I mean, there's a lot of things, as we've talked about on the podcast before, that go into true rest, but sleep is foundational. It is absolutely foundational. And your background is incredible. You're an integrative sleep specialist and a wellness consultant. So tell us a little bit about what that actually means.
Yeah, thanks so much, Krista. So I went to medical school. I am a medical doctor. I trained in internal medicine, so doctor for adults. I did primary care. I ran an ICU in the hospital. I've done ER consults. So I feel like I've done the whole gamut of pretty much adult medical care. I'm also trained in sleep medicine. So a lot of people don't know that it's an actual medical subspecialty. So it was a year after my internal medicine training, and a lot of the training in sleep is for folks who can't breathe well at night. So people who snore, gas choke, stop breathing. Sleep doctors typically run sleep labs or do home sleep studies and really manage sleep apnea. Since I like to learn, the best way to put it. And I grew up Seventh-day Adventist. So a lot of the message that, we learned through our church and growing up is really the health message. And so prevention was always taught as a better than cure. So looking at other ways that I can help someone, on their health journey, basically things I didn't learn in medical school, a lot of things like nutrition. We learned things like energy medicine, Chinese medicine, Ayurvedic medicine, herbal supplements. So just a lot of other tools is basically what I describe integrative medicine. How do we integrate other healing modalities to help someone on their journey? And what I do now is I have a practice located in Hawaii, but I'm physically in California. So I support patients with their sleep health needs in the state of Hawaii and California. And then as a wellness consultant, I talk to different brands. Sometimes I talk to reporters and give quotes about sleep information. And I have my own platform called Sleephoria, where I teach women, because I'm really passionate about it, helping women, because I think a well-rested woman has the energy, clarity, and drive to change the world about how they can get better rest. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, amen to that.
So just supporting women because, I think women are unique in that in the medical space, we don't necessarily learn much about the needs of women, So when I was practicing in the hospital, a lady would come in a little bit older, with a little bit of nausea and dizziness. And that was her symptom of having a heart attack. And pretty remarkable. It's different, than men, how they can have that crushing pain in their chest, sweating, and that's their heart attack. So women present a little bit differently. And I think a lot of doctors just really aren't trained in sleep, especially sleep in the midlife and the menopause era. So that's sort of my focus in helping women in their midlife range, 40s and above, really get better sleep because a lot of us are tired and we don't have to be. So yeah.
Well, that's hopeful. Yeah. It's like, let's just keep saying that over and over. We don't have to be tired.
We don't have to be tired. Yeah. There's a lot of reasons why we are tired. And I think some of the narrative that I hear is that, well, it's just, part of aging. A lot of my friends are tired and I'm going through menopause or perimenopause. And it's just, just the way it is. But I want to encourage you folks, as you're listening and hearing my voice, is that there are a lot of reasons for this. And there are a lot of simple tools that you may want to incorporate to get better rest.
Okay, well, let's talk about those tools.
Yeah.
I will say, when I think about being sleep deprived as a woman, I think about the early years of parenting when I was waking up every hour, every 2 hours. And I kind of had the mindset of once I get out of this phase where my children are interrupting my sleep, I'm going to go back to being this well-rested woman. And maybe I had a few years of that. I think I probably did. But I'm back in the phase of waking up at 3:00 in the morning and not being able to fall back asleep. So let's focus in on this particular age group, this midlife group.
Yeah.
When a woman comes in and has a consult with you, where do you start with her?
Yeah, great question, Alex. And since I guess first and foremost, if she's seeing me in my medical practice, being a medical sleep doctor, I'm going to want to rule out any underlying sleep conditions. And so the biggest that I think we don't always talk about in women is obstructive sleep apnea, even more so as we go through the change. So what is obstructive sleep apnea? Typically, it's known as a male condition, right? And the physiology happens when we sleep. Our muscles relax. If you're thinking specifically of the muscles of our upper airway, it's our tongue. It can fall back and close our airway off. And that just happens as we get older, along with changes in our hormones. So estrogen and progesterone are really supportive for our muscles, right? And then unfortunately, as we go through the change, things just start to get a little saggy, even in our upper airway. So the rates of obstructive sleep apnea double to triple as someone who's in premenopause to someone post. And it's a really common reason why someone has a hard time maintaining sleep. And going back to the story I said when I was working in the hospital, when someone came in with a heart attack, women don't necessarily have to snore to have sleep apnea. When we took a look at some of the research, the way women present with sleep apnea could be headaches in the morning, irritability, more moodiness, and fatigue during the daytime, which aren't the cardinal symptoms of sleep apnea. They're
Wow.
snoring, gasping, choking, and witnessed sleep apnea and, feeling unrefreshed in the morning. So it's no wonder, up to 90% from some of the research shows that women are undiagnosed with sleep apnea. And what we get, I should say, is a thyroid test, an antidepressant, and maybe sent to a therapist.
Mm.
And there's a physical reason for this, right? Your tongue is falling back and your brain is saying, hey, you got to wake up and breathe. And that constantly happens throughout the night. So that's definitely something that I always want to rule out, because all the prayer and the meditation in the world, right? Sometimes our busy minds can keep us from staying asleep, but all the prayer and meditation doesn't do anything to open up your airway if your tongue is choking you. And it's pretty easy to get the test. I mean, you can do it in the comfort of your home now. So technology is really good. So if you do think maybe you're tired, have a hard time staying asleep, ask your doctor if you're a candidate for a home sleep apnea test. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what you do, is you just go to your doctor and say, I'd really like a home apnea test. And it's a couple of nights, right? It monitors you for a couple of nights.
It depends on the type. So not all of the home kits are made the same. Some of them are just little rings that you put on your finger. And some of them have, the nasal cannula, a whole belt around, and then the pulse oximeter on your finger. I would say if you get the one that's basically just the ring on your finger, you want to do it a couple nights. But I say the classic one is, pretty good at detecting. At the end of the day, it's not 100%. What do I mean by that? And I always say, because women are so smart, our brains can be so sensitive to the fact that if our airway partially collapses, our brain can wake us up before it completely collapses. So the home test may miss 5 to 10% of patients who potentially could have sleep apnea because it doesn't monitor your brain waves. So if you do the home test, just adding another layer and it's negative, don't stop there, especially if you're really tired, especially if you're having a lot of headaches. Go for the next test, which is the in-lab sleep study. Yeah.
Okay. So symptoms, I just want to go over again,
Sure.
symptoms that you may have it. So what I heard you say was headaches, maybe fatigue during the day. Remind us again what some of the key symptoms are that we're looking for.
Sure, Krista. So snoring, gasping, choking, stopping breathing, irritability, morning headaches, daytime sleepiness, fatigue. And one that some doctors don't even know about is waking up to urinate, right? So what happens as we get older, we lose that estrogen and it can affect the lining of your urethra. Maybe you're drinking a lot of water and you think that's why you're waking up to urinate. But guess what? Sleep apnea can also cause this. Why? Think of like the plumbing. Yeah, I know, right?
Who knew?
I like to blame sleep apnea on everything because I like to say I could make everything better once we treat it. Yeah. So if you think of your airway like a pipe, right? A pipe where you live. If there's a narrowing in the pipe, what happens downstream? There's more pressure. So similar here, if your tongue is falling back, your lungs are taking deeper breaths to open up that airway. More pressure in your lungs puts more pressure in your heart. Your heart will stretch and signal down to your kidneys to tell you to wake up and urinate. So if you're waking up more than twice a night, that's abnormal. I've had some women wake up 4 or 5 times a night. We get them diagnosed and treated with sleep apnea. They're down to 1 or 0. They're feeling amazing. Yeah. So urinating at night is not normal. Go get that checked out. Sleep apnea is common, but certainly there are other reasons for it as well, like drinking
That's so
water. Yeah.
interesting. Like I've never heard that. And yet,
Yeah.
like, think about what a pain that is, first of
Yeah.
all, and how disruptive it is to your sleep. And
Yeah,
so that
definitely.
is fascinating. Okay, let's go back to snoring. Talk
Sure.
to us about snoring, because I think a lot of people just go, as people get older, they snore. Is that true or
Yeah.
is that not?
Definitely. So if you think of snoring, just like the room that you're in, imagine at night, what's happening is the walls are collapsing. And so as you get older, unfortunately, your muscles just aren't as strong. So there are higher rates of snoring as we get older. I read a study recently where about a third of women said they didn't snore, and they actually brought them to the sleep lab and they were snoring. And I think one of the questions was, do women snore as loud as men? And it's like, yes, there's just a lot of biases in life and in medicine. And so, one of my friends says, I don't snore like a man or snore like a bear. So there's this whole like snoring is a male condition. But I mean, if you have, a throat, a neck, a tongue, you are, apt to snore. So what can happen as we go through midlife, right? Those hormone changes. Also, fat gets almost redistributed. Our growth hormone goes down, our metabolism slows. And unfortunately, we do gain weight as we're older. If that weight is around our neck, that can also lead to snoring because that extra tissue can push on the airway. Yeah. And snoring, I mean, it is a nuisance if it's really loud. Sometimes I have patients that come and tell me, I got to get this test done because my daughter, she doesn't want to go on vacation with me. If we do, she wants me to get my own room and it's really disruptive. And so, yeah, it can be more than just a noise issue, but more so than that, we see some of the research shows that snoring in women can be associated with high blood pressure. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard that.
Mhm.
What is this whole thing about shame around women snoring? I mean, it is interesting, isn't it? Like it's
Yeah.
okay for men to snore, but there's a weird thing around women snoring. And
Yeah.
yet, what if instead we shifted that mindset and we just said this is a symptom of
Yeah.
something that we need to like uncover instead of being like
Exactly.
embarrassed about it, like see
Right.
it as, oh, it's just a symptom. And now
Yeah.
that's telling me something that I need to do something about this.
Exactly. It's a sign. I snore. I mean, definitely more so when I'm sick, but I have really big tonsils. And so there are certain nights where my muscles relax even more and I snore. It doesn't mean that you have sleep apnea, though, if you snore. Some
Mm,
treatments can be really simple, sleep on your side or get a wedge pillow or, get an adjustable bed to prop your torso up. And that can actually eliminate some of the symptoms of the snoring. Yeah.
hmm. And then, okay, what we didn't kind of address is on the other side. So let's say
Sure.
that you go get the sleep test and you
Mhm.
are positive
Yeah.
for sleep apnea.
Mhm.
Then what? What are the options?
Yeah. So I put all my patients who are interested on the CPAP machine, and what that stands for is continuous positive airway pressure. So the best analogy that I've been able to come up with, actually, my friend talked about this, is you've seen by the side of the road, used by a car dealership, those waving arm balloons, right? The waving
Right.
arm things. Yeah. So you imagine your airway like that. It's a balloon that's collapsing at night. All we do is blow air in to keep the airway nice and open. So there's a mask that you wear on your face, connected to a hose, connected to a machine that just pushes the tongue and soft tissue back. And it really does work. Typically, some insurance companies only pay for it if you have moderate to severe sleep apnea. But if you're really tired, if you have a lot of headaches in the morning, and your number is above 5, so 5 is the cutoff, 5 events per hour, I recommend trying it because at the end of the day, if it makes you feel better, it's definitely worth it. So that's the mainstay of therapy. Certainly, if you're someone like myself who has big tonsils or a crooked nose, having surgery can help just really open up the airway. There's also dental treatments, mouth guards. What they can do is just move the tongue and jaw forward to give you more space to help you breathe. And then talking about different positions as well. And then weight loss. Weight loss can help if you have a large neck.
Mhm. Weight loss can help if you have a large neck.
Yeah.
There's motivation right
Yeah.
there.
Yeah. I mean, some people, that is honestly their motivation to lose weight
Uh-huh.
because they don't want to have to be dependent on the machine or use it, right? I mean,
Yeah.
you got to clean it, you got to get replacement supplies. There was a huge recall. So, yeah. it can be quite cumbersome, but honestly, it does work. So,
Right. I
yeah.
know I am married to somebody who uses a CPAP machine, and
Yeah.
I will say the quality of sleep that I think he gets is
Good.
amazing compared to when he doesn't. And the
Good.
quality of sleep I get
Yeah, I love
because he
that.
is not snoring. Like he is
That's so
concerned
critical.
that the machine is
Mm-hmm.
bothering me. And I tell him, no, no, no.
Nowhere, nowhere near
It,
this orange. Yeah.
no, right. It's very quiet. And
Yeah.
it, I think, I don't use it myself, but it
Mm-hmm.
seems that it's not a big thing for him
Good.
to put it on every night. So
Oh, I'm glad. Yeah. Let's normalize that. Yeah.
yeah,
It's not that bad as it seems. Yeah.
no, I do want to normalize that.
Yeah.
It seems to help. It helps me when he
Oh,
uses it.
yeah. That's important.
One thing we haven't talked about is what's
Yeah.
the cost of not treating sleep apnea?
Yeah.
Oof. Yeah. I mean, I guess I'm like, where do I start? Like the cost of sleep deprivation, there's, car accidents, for thinking on that end of the spectrum, not going to work because you're tired, not being able to, live your best life, follow your dreams because you're tired. Depression and anxiety are really huge. I mean, not being able to take care of your family because, mommy needs to take a nap because she's so tired. The list can go on. We can talk about health related issues. So if it's moderate to severe, higher risk for things like heart attack, stroke, high blood pressure, diabetes, weight gain. Yeah, it's almost like when you don't get good sleep, everything can feel like it's falling apart. And there's no need. There's no need for that. Yeah.
Well, and I mean, tell me if I'm wrong, because I might be, but I thought I read something recently that talked about the connection between female heart attacks and lack of sleep or not quality sleep. Is that a true connection?
Yeah, typically for heart health, you want to get at least 6 hours of sleep. Those who sleep less than that have higher rates of, high blood pressure. But if you have at least moderate to severe sleep apnea that goes untreated, sleep apnea is actually a chronic condition. So why is that? Because if your heart's not getting enough oxygen, it has to work harder and harder. So when you're sleeping, your heart's actually resting, right? The blood pressure goes down, the heart rate goes down. And so if you have either from choices or lifestyle that you're not getting enough rest, or, from mechanistic issue where your tongue is falling back, that can definitely lead to higher rates of heart issues. And we know in the US, heart attacks and heart disease is the number one killer for women. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So good point, Krista. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So what I just heard you say is that 6 hours is the minimum, but I've heard 7.
Yeah.
So is it 6 or 7, Dr. Val?
Yeah,
Clarify it for
so
us.
7 to 9 hours for adults. So everyone above 18 and up is ideal. And when I say that, some people may cringe or start to feel guilty. And I'm not necessarily super rigid or an absolutist. For me personally, I feel better around 8.5. So I always encourage patients, and when I'm giving talks, is find out how much sleep you need to operate at your best, right? If you think of sleep as a battery, or sleep as your fuel tank in your car, if you're going to have a really busy day, a lot of meetings, if you're going to need to drive, certainly you want to figure out how much sleep you need and make sure your tank is full. If it's, the weekend, you don't really have any plans, maybe you're just going to, hang out at home, go to the grocery store, could you get by on, I don't want to say a quarter tank. I'm thinking like a half tank, right? Could you get by on less sleep? Probably so. Yeah. So definitely on average, best to get 7 to 9 hours. But if you are getting like 6.5 and you're functioning, it's probably okay. Because I think you take a look at it in the context, right? So some of my patients or some people come into me because they've read online, okay, I don't get 8 hours of sleep. If you don't get 8 hours of sleep, you're at higher risk for dementia. A lot of people worry about dementia and Alzheimer's. And they want me to predict if they're going to get this condition. And I'm like, sleep can contribute to memory issues. And the reason for that is during the deep stage of sleep. So there's 4 stages of sleep, 1, 2, 3, and then REM, during the deep stage, which is stage 3, we have the trash collectors, or some docs call it the shampoo. So throughout the day, we actually have toxins that build up. And during deep sleep, the trash collectors or the shampoo comes out and sort of washes out all that smut and grime. And if you're shortchanging yourself from sleep, you may not be going into those deep stages. These proteins, these toxins actually can build up, and it's associated with developing Alzheimer's. But taking a step back, sleep is one component. Another large component is your nutrition. Are you eating healthy foods that are nourishing to your body and your brain? Do you have a family history? Is it in your genetics? What about your smoking history, right? What about your heart health? Have you already had a stroke? Or do you already have high blood pressure? Or do you already have diabetes? And we know those things, if they're uncontrolled, can contribute to it. So yes, sleep is really important, but I think at the end of the day, I always like to focus on, teaching my audience, teaching the patients, that focus on things that you can control. Because if you're worried about, there's so many things to worry about, it can actually make your sleep worse, right? And sleep happens when our brain waves slow down. And worrying about not being able to sleep, may increase your risk for dementia, at a certain percentage. But, how do we get your mindset back? Well, the rest that I'm getting is going to be beneficial for me. And if I have a hard time tonight, then I can try again tomorrow. And at the end of the day, no one's a perfect sleeper 100% of the time. Even myself, I will watch some shows or read a book late, typically on the weekends, because I don't have to get up too early or get the kids to school. And part of life is being able to enjoy it, right? And using the gifts that we have to serve others, our God-given gifts. So if we're giving ourselves the opportunity to have as much energy as possible, it just makes that a lot easier to do so.
Yeah, I have a friend, she just says, just calm down. Like, it's not that, like about like something in life. She's like,
right.
She like
Yeah,
says
yeah,
her
yeah.
name to herself. And then
Yeah.
she's like, just calm down. Like, it's not, it's
Yeah.
okay. We just make
Exactly.
so much of everything.
Yeah.
And it's like, let's just calm down and just take that pressure off a little bit.
Exactly. I love that. And that's actually what I tell my patients. Like, can you step back, right? And if you have a name for this part of your brain, right? Some people think it's like the angel and the devil, and who are you listening to? Or you can just say, oh, brain, you're being really silly right now. Because you don't have to believe everything your brain tells you. Right. And I think that's something to let off some of the pressure. Your brain is just going to offer up some really sort of silly things, because, I think of it like the toddler brain, or if you have a young puppy, right? Toddlers throw tantrums, puppies chase their tail around and around. And if you just let that continue, it will. But you can just be like, nope, it's not going to bother me now. Another way I like to think of it is if you have these intrusive thoughts at night, think of it like someone like physically coming to your door and soliciting you, trying to sell something. Like, are you going to let that salesperson come in at 1 a.m.? Are you going to be like, nope, I'm not going to deal with it right now. It's time for me to rest. Create those, psychological boundaries around your brain. And the more you do it, the easier it gets. Yeah, it sounds a little bit silly, but honestly, what your friend is saying, it does work. And I recommend
totally.
it.
And we actually in the series had 2 episodes on mindset. And that's exactly what you're talking about is we can choose, right? What thoughts we allow to be there and what thoughts we do, right? Retrain them. So good. Yeah. So what do you use to measure your sleep? Like, what do you recommend? Because I know there's different things different gadgets we can buy to help us measure sleep.
Yeah, that's a great question. I am the type of person that doesn't like things on me. I typically don't wear a ring or a watch or even much jewelry. So there are wearables and then there are nearables. So some of the brands like Oura Ring, Fitbit, the iWatch, they do have sleep trackers in them. And what I want to encourage listeners to think about is they're pretty helpful for sleep duration. So if you're going to wear the tracker when you're asleep, right, the options are awake or asleep. So it has like a 50-50 chance. And so a lot of these trackers are either based on motion, right? Ideally, if you're asleep, your body's not moving, but you can actually move depending on the stage of sleep that you're in, and then heart rate. So for wake or sleep, I'd say maybe 80%, 90% accuracy. The caution is for sleep stages. And so it's really hard, I would say, to quantify whether you're in deep sleep, REM sleep, light sleep based on these trackers. Some of the research shows they're about 70% accurate, maybe higher or lower, depending on the brand that you're using. I've had some folks that come and say, oh, doc, take a look at my tracker. It says I've had 20% restless sleep. My deep sleep is like super low. And then I ask them, well, how do you feel in the morning? Oh, I feel great. And I'm like, well, don't let so-and-so company dictate your subjective experience of your sleep because they're only so accurate. And there's actually a condition called orthosomnia where we can overtrack and that causes more worry. So those are the wearables. There's also something called Nearable where you don't have to wear anything. It monitors either motion from your phone, different apps, or there's even pads or smart beds that can detect whether you're awake or asleep. I don't know the specific research on how accurate those are, probably in the range of, maybe 70% or higher. I always think the trackers are helpful for having a baseline. So if you're someone who, maybe going through menopause, having hot flashes and you just got treatment for that, but you're still having a hard time sleeping and you read online that you shouldn't watch the clock and you're sort of curious how long you're sleeping, maybe that'll be helpful. Because if you add an intervention, say you changed your diet, you're eating more plants now, you drop the alcohol or the caffeine, then you can use that tracker to see, okay, did it actually improve the duration of my sleep? Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's how I sort of use the tracking system.
So you become investigative a little bit with it.
Yeah. Do your own little science project for your sleep.
Yeah.
That gives it purpose because sometimes I'm like, why? So what? So I know that I didn't get great sleep. So now what?
Yeah.
But you're saying if you're tracking it in combination with other choices you're making, then that can give you information that you can use that can be helpful. Because sometimes I'm like, yeah, I know I didn't get great sleep, but the fact that this confirms that, I don't really know what kind of information that is, but I think when it's used in combination with something else,
and some people, agree, Alex. So, I mean, some people just want information to have the information because sometimes people compare. So, I've seen a lot on like social media about like my Oura Ring score and it's like, I'm in the 90s, and it's just like, I think another way for people to point to themselves, that they're doing a good job. But I think
gold star.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Or, I stayed up late because, we went to a wedding and then, oh my goodness, I ate things that I typically don't eat. And now you can see how it's disrupted. So yeah, it's the why behind it. If you're using it for a good purpose and a beneficial purpose, it's helpful. But yeah, data for the reason of data.
Right. Yeah. I think that's a good word. It's a good balanced word. What are you mentioned this at the beginning, and I do want to come back to it, just some more holistic ways to help us with sleep. And what can we be doing in just our diet or what we're, exposing ourselves to that helps?
Yeah, I love this question. And I think always number one, I want to say prioritize sleep. I think we talked about how important it is. I think a lot of the narrative still within our culture is I'll sleep when I'm dead or I'll sleep when I'm retired. But it's almost like, don't wait for that, right? Because who doesn't want more energy? Who doesn't want a clearer brain, right? And you can get that and it's free, right? Just through getting better sleep. The second thing I always recommend, and women, we do so much for those around us, for working full time, for our families, certainly if we're getting to middle life, middle age, maybe we have elderly parents that we're taking care of. Schedule time for yourself. And what does that mean? Can the last hour of the day, should the last hour of your day be just for you? And if that sounds like too much, right? Giving yourself dedicated 60 minutes, how about a half an hour? And during that time, create a wind down routine, create a ritual that gets your mind and your body in a space that's ready for sleep. Maybe it is, reading your devotional, praying, journaling, listening to soft music, whatever you enjoy doing. Ideally, it's nothing too stimulating. I certainly would recommend not watching the news late at night because a lot of the news just isn't helpful information. It can be really scary and anxiety provoking. So that's one of my top recommendations. And taking a look at food. We take a look at something like caffeine. typically it lasts in the body, some of the research shows 2 hours to 5 hours to 6 hours. For some people, it can last longer than 10 or even 20 hours. So even if you're drinking in the morning and you're having a hard time sleeping at night, maybe it's time to switch to decaf or some herbal teas. Just put that into consideration. And then specific things for diet. And when you take a look at diet, what's healthy for the brain, what's healthy for the heart is also what's healthy for sleep. And research more and more is showing that plant-based diet, so avoiding sugars, avoiding carbohydrates. And we've actually done sleep studies where we took a look at someone's diet. People who had more saturated fats, so animal-based fats, sort of fast food, simple carbohydrates like sugar, actually woke up more during the night, had more arousals, had more awakenings, and also had less deep sleep, right? And deep sleep, unfortunately, as we get older, we do have less of that, and that's just age related. So set yourself up to getting better quality sleep by eating more plants, having more high fiber, because it does result in you're able to stay asleep longer and also go into the deeper stages of sleep. So really important recommendations there.
Yeah, that's really good. So tell me a little bit, like, what do you eat? I'd love to hear even like, what are some of the foods you eat and some of the things that you think for yourself provide deep sleep?
Yeah, definitely. And right now, like this morning, I had some oatmeal, steel cut oatmeal with some chia seeds. I have some berries. Lunchtime, I'm trying to incorporate a lot more beans because I'm not a big meat eater. I tend to gravitate more towards fish. Fish is actually, oily fish, fatty fish is really good for the brain. You want those good omega-3 fatty acids. So mackerel or salmon or sardines, maybe with a salad or a soup. Sometimes I just go to Trader Joe's and get the can of lentil soup, depending on how busy my practice is. And then dinner time, I am not as rigid, I would say, because sometimes at the end of a busy clinic day, I just don't want to cook and, tell my husband, let's just go out to eat. And then when I go out to eat, it just depends on where we're going. But I definitely, I really like vegetables. And so I do gravitate towards things that have at least a side of veggies and maybe a protein. But at the end of the day, I'm not a perfect sleeper. I definitely avoid now eating a lot of sweets. And it's really interesting for me. What I found out through my own health journey is that when I was a lot more stressed, when I was working through sort of a busy hospital system, I snacked a lot because, I didn't really prepare. And I had a lot of chocolate. One thing though, chocolate actually is good for your sleep if it's more like the 70% cacao because it can, sort of relax you. But,
that's the key though, right? Like it has to be the upper, like 70, 80, 90%. Yeah.
It's not like the M&Ms and,
yeah, exactly.
I like the M&Ms with peanuts or, almonds because, nuts are healthy.
All right.
So it's also covered in that sugar, but it's give and take, right? Not every day is going to be the same. And certainly on the weekends, I'm not as strict, maybe we'll go to brunch, and I'll have a breakfast burrito, but I'm really trying to incorporate at least 5 servings of vegetable a day and serving of beans. I'm not always successful, but I think that's sort of what I'm headed toward. That's my goal. And then another big thing is water. A lot of us don't drink enough water. I'm trying to drink 3 of these a day. And I think yesterday I drank 2.5. So maybe I'll drink a little bit more today. But sometimes we're really tired. And, if we're sleeping okay, it could just be a form of dehydration. 70% of your body's made of water. And if you're not replenishing that, especially if it's getting warmer and you're sweating, depending on the level of activity, we just got to stay hydrated. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So true. Water. More water, more water. It's just
I'm getting thirsty as you keep saying.
Yeah, no, but it really is. It has so many benefits on every level. Okay. So if people want more resources for finding out about sleep, like what resources or books or podcasts do you recommend?
Great. I say Why We Sleep by Matthew Walker is probably one of the first and foremost books out there. I think over 1 million copies. He's a researcher of sleep at UC Berkeley. So I think that's a good place to start. Specifically for women, I have some resources on my website, sleepforia.com, where I write about a lot of just sleep health and whole living articles. The last one I wrote about was actually brain fog and sleep, where I talk a little bit more about this whole lymphatic system and dementia. And I also do about twice a month free mini webinars about sleep topics on YouTube. Yeah, so I'd say some of my resources, Dr. Matthew Walker's book, podcasts, Molly McLaughlin, but I think she got married, Sleep as a Skill. She has a really good podcast. And then for women who are maybe unsure if they have sleep apnea or had questions about sleep apnea, there's a really good podcast called Sleep Apnea Stories, and that's run by Emma. Yeah, I can give you those links. But yeah, there's I'd say a lot of great women out there who are in the sleep space and are just really promoting how important sleep is. And it makes jobs in the medical profession a lot easier, because sometimes we're in the exam room, we get so busy that we don't do as much like public facing work. But it's really important to sort of collaborate with some of our colleagues in the online space.
Thank you, Dr. Val. This has been
My
so
pleasure, Krista.
helpful. This has really been helpful and so practical, honestly, and something literally every human being on the planet needs.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we sleep a third of our life. So if you're going to live to 100, right, that's 30 years. Why not make it the best sleep? And right, God wants us to rest. He rested. If you take a look at creation, so it's so important.
Yeah.
Well, and what I heard you say is that it doesn't have to be hard as people. And I think that's a new word for people.
Yeah.
Because I think you just hear, well, it's going to get hard as you get older.
Yeah. Yeah. It doesn't have to be. Hard is a choice. If you can believe that hard is a choice. Yeah. I think life is hard already. Like, let's simplify.
Let's not make sleep hard too.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, that's a great one. Let's not make sleep hard too. Exactly.
Well, thank you, Dr. Val. This has been great.
My pleasure.
All right. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.